The Cleveland Browns thought they were getting a promising young quarterback with a clean slate, someone who could quietly develop behind the scenes and maybe one day become the future of the franchise. Instead, they've found themselves at the center of a social media explosion that's so careless, so wildly unnecessary, that it could erase a career before it ever truly begins. And the most shocking part? The meltdown didn't come from the player himself. It came from the person closest to him, someone who should have been protecting his future, not putting it in jeopardy. Dillon Gabriel, a quarterback fighting for every minute he can get on an NFL field, woke up to headlines no rookie ever wants to see. Fans furious, media pouncing, team insiders reportedly questioning whether keeping him on the roster is even worth the headache anymore. All because his fiancée, with one seemingly harmless TikTok and one emotional comment, walked straight into a battle that never needed to happen. This wasn't a fumble or an interception. It wasn't a blown read or a missed throw. It was a moment of pure social media chaos that instantly turned a quiet backup into the most talked about player in Cleveland for all the wrong reasons. The type of attention that sticks, the type that follows you, the type that can destroy trust inside an NFL locker room long before you ever get a real chance to prove yourself on the field. And as this situation spiraled into a full-blown controversy, the entire league started paying attention, not to Dillon Gabriel's arm, not to his potential, but to the drama surrounding his name. Because in the NFL, one rule always applies. If the distraction outweighs the talent, the career doesn't last. It all started with what looked like the most harmless kind of content you can find on TikTok. One of those casual get-ready-with-me videos that influencers post every single day. Dillon Gabriel's fiancée was simply showing off outfits she might wear to a Cleveland Browns game, trying on jackets and leggings, chatting with a family member in the background, enjoying herself like anyone else preparing for a weekend event. There was no negativity in her voice, no harsh commentary, no warning signs of a disaster brewing. It was just fashion, fun, and a phone camera rolling. But then came the caption. 5 tiny words that carried more weight than anything she said in the video. Words that instantly hit a nerve with people who have lived and breathed Cleveland football for generations. Browns loss. What's new? Nothing aggressive, nothing vulgar, just a quick jab, but directed at a fan base known for being fiercely loyal and a franchise that has spent years trying to prove it's no longer a national punchline. Browns fans didn't read it as a harmless joke. They read it as a shot fired from inside their own house. A public statement that losing is just business as usual in Cleveland, coming not from a rival, not from the media, but from the fiancé of a current Browns player. A player still fighting for a place on the team. A player who, according to many observers, cannot afford even the slightest distraction attached to his name. Social media doesn't wait for explanations or clarifications. It reacts instantly. And this reaction was fast, loud, and brutal. Comment sections filled with angry replies. Some people called the caption disrespectful. Others felt it was proof she didn't understand the city she was stepping into. A city where the team is more than football, it's identity. That single caption transformed a simple TikTok into a talking point on sports pages and fan forums. It became the kind of post that doesn't fade away after a few scrolls, the kind that sparks screenshots, reposts, and debate. And once the views started piling up, once the comments turned heated, the situation was no longer just a harmless piece of influencer content. It was suddenly seen as a public challenge to the pride of an entire franchise. But surprisingly, that wasn't even the part of the story that set Browns insiders on edge. Because what happened next took this from a slight misstep to a complete storm. And that's when things truly exploded. There's something people outside the league don't always understand. In the NFL, the drama doesn't start when a quarterback throws a bad pass. It starts when someone around him says the wrong thing, especially when that quarterback isn't a superstar. Backup quarterbacks live by a very different set of rules that aren't written anywhere, but every player knows them by heart.
The biggest one? Stay invisible until they need you. No headlines, no chaos, no reason for coaches to look your direction unless it involves game preparation and improvement. That's where this situation becomes so much bigger than a caption on a TikTok video. Dillon Gabriel isn't a franchise icon with years of goodwill built up. He doesn't have a trophy case that allows people to shrug off distractions. He is a young quarterback fighting for relevance in one of the most demanding jobs on the planet. His margin for error, on or off the field, is microscopic. That's why NFL families, especially those tied to players still proving themselves, are coached to be extremely careful online. There's a reason most wives and fiancés in the league stay quiet about team performance. They know that anything they say can reflect directly back onto the player they love. Even a small slip-up can be seen as a sign of arrogance, immaturity, or a lack of respect for the team structure. Fair or not, one comment can turn a rookie from a hopeful future piece into someone a franchise suddenly doesn't trust. And this time, perception flipped fast. Fans felt insulted, critics sharpened their knives, and rumor has it that a few people inside the Browns organization weren't thrilled about the optics. Not because they're thin-skinned, but because they've seen this movie before. Drama that begins with a post and ends with a player packing his locker. When a franchise is trying to win games, they don't want distractions, especially ones that come from outside the locker room entirely. In the NFL, every message matters. Every word represents more than just the person who typed it. And the moment Dillon Gabriel's fiancée made that caption public, a rule that has saved countless careers was broken. Don't give the front office a reason to question whether keeping you around is more trouble than it's worth. And unfortunately for Dillon, that was only the beginning. Because the situation could have ended right there. A small controversy, a few angry fans, and a lesson learned. But instead, it escalated into something far more explosive. Because someone decided to fire back. And that changed everything. If the caption was a spark, the comment section became the gasoline. It only took one angry fan to push the situation far beyond a simple misunderstanding. Someone jumped into the comments and unleashed a harsh, personal attack, the kind of over-the-top, emotional rant that internet produces every single day. It was rude, it was unnecessary, and it should have been the moment where everyone involved simply took a deep breath and ignored it. But that's not what happened.
Instead of scrolling past and letting the storm die quietly, Dillon Gabriel's fiancée fired back. She didn't just defend him as a partner. She made a claim but instantly set off alarm bells. Actually, everyone in the building wants him to play. A sentence that sounded small on paper but carried massive implications inside the NFL world. In just a few words, she positioned herself as if she knew the internal opinions of the coaching staff, the locker room, and even the front office. It suggested that the team, the people whose jobs depend on making the right decision at quarterback, were ignoring the player they supposedly believed in. It hinted that the coaches were wrong, that they were holding Dillon back, and that Shedeur Sanders shouldn't be starting at all. Even if she didn't mean it that way, that's exactly how the message came across. Because once you imply that everyone inside the facility thinks differently than the coaching decisions on the field, you're no longer just fighting a troll online. You're questioning the judgment of the very organization that signs the checks. And it's the kind of comment that makes coaches, executives, and even teammates suddenly wonder, who's really speaking here? Her or him? NFL culture is based on loyalty and trust. Every player is expected to protect the locker room like family. But now, from the outside looking in, it seemed like information, or at least the illusion of insider knowledge, was being thrown into the public arena just to win an argument with a random social media user. That's the type of moment that turns irritation into real anger. That's how a mild controversy becomes a headline. And that's when teams start asking a dangerous question. Is the drama worth the potential? Because at this point, the Browns weren't dealing with a bad game or a player misstep. They were dealing with a situation that suddenly raised doubts about maturity, professionalism, and whether this rookie quarterback understood the environment he had stepped into. And those doubts were only about to grow stronger. Because when the spotlight turned to Dillon's actual standing on the roster,
things looked even worse.
That's what makes the social media controversy so much worse. Because when you're already on the bubble, when your job depends on proving that you're worth developing, the last thing you want is any distraction tied to your name, especially one involving criticism of the team. Coaches don't like noise. General managers don't like headaches. And in a league where teams will replace you without blinking, being seen as more trouble than you're worth is basically a career-ending label. Every single day, Dillon is competing not just against other quarterbacks, but against the numbers. Every roster cut is a silent countdown. Every misstep is magnified. Every negative headline becomes a reason for a team to look the other way when they decide who stays and who goes. So when this controversy exploded, people around the league didn't ask, "Is the fiancé wrong?" They asked something far more dangerous. Why are we dealing with this from a backup? Because replaceability is the harshest reality in professional football. And right now, there are dozens of young quarterbacks across the country hoping for the same chance Dillon has. Guys just like him, hungry, talented, and carrying zero drama with them. That's what puts his situation in such a fragile place. He didn't lose his job on the field. He didn't suffer a major injury. He didn't break any rules. But this story, this unnecessary, preventable story, suddenly gave Cleveland a reason to move on. And in the NFL, once a reason appears, it rarely goes away. But as damaging as this looks from the front office view, the impact goes even deeper inside the locker room, where trust is everything. NFL teams don't just scout the player they see on the field. They scout the entire package that comes with him. They evaluate maturity. They evaluate composure. They evaluate whether a player can handle the spotlight without allowing outside noise to crack the foundation they're trying to build. And when a controversy erupts before a player has even proven themselves, that becomes a red flag that's impossible to ignore. Executives and coaches ask very specific questions whenever a situation like this appears. Is this someone who can stay focused when things get tough? Is this someone who brings stability or chaos into the building? Is this drama going to follow him wherever he goes? In Dillon Gabriel's case, he didn't create the conflict, but NFL teams see the big picture. They know that once social media becomes part of a player's narrative, it sticks like glue. Fair or not, the perception becomes, if this is happening now, what happens when he actually faces a real setback? And that's exactly the kind of concern that can ruin a young career before it reaches the runway. Because the NFL is not a charity. It's a business, one worth billions of dollars, powered by carefully crafted public image, fan loyalty, and brand control. Any threat to that stability is treated seriously. And when the drama comes from someone outside the organization entirely, a family member, a friend, a relationship, it becomes even more frustrating for those in charge. They can coach a player. They can discipline a player. They can hold a player accountable. But they can't control anyone else's thumbs on a phone screen.
That's when management starts to wonder whether keeping this player is worth the constant monitoring, whether the potential reward is truly greater than the risk. And when a player hasn't proven himself yet, the answer is often painfully simple. And this is the part that's often overlooked. The internet doesn't forget. This moment is now part of Dillon's record, not the official stat sheet, but a version that front offices do consider. When his name pops up in league discussions, it won't just be about his arm strength or his collegiate highlights anymore. It will be about this, about a TikTok, about unnecessary noise, about the first sign of instability in his career. All of that creates pressure, not just from coaches, not just from the fan base, but from every direction a young quarterback is expected to stand tall. And pressure exposes cracks. It tests relationships. It pushes everything into a spotlight no one asked for. But there's another side to this that makes the situation even harder to recover from. The side inside the locker room, where respect is earned daily and lost instantly. And once teammates start looking at you differently, the path back becomes almost impossible. NFL locker rooms operate on one currency that matters more than talent: trust. Every player in that room needs to believe that the guy next to him is fully committed to the team, not just when cameras are on, not just when things are going well, but every single moment they walk into the building. And when the wrong story hits the outside world, it doesn't just create headlines, it creates doubt. Now, imagine being one of Dillon Gabriel's teammates. You're busting your tail all week, following the plan, trying to win games, keeping the drama out so you can stay locked in. Then suddenly, your backup quarterback, someone who hasn't even fully earned a role yet, becomes the source of nationwide drama because of something said online by someone who isn't even part of the grind at all. It forces players to ask questions they never wanted to ask. Who's talking to who? Who's sharing what? Who's stirring up noise outside the building? And in the NFL, once teammates start even wondering if someone's inner circle might be speaking on behalf of the locker room, trust begins to fracture. A backup quarterback's job is to calm the storm, not create one. To support the starter, not cast a shadow over him. To be a glue guy, reliable, dependable, focused. If the perception shifts even a little in the opposite direction, the room gets uncomfortable fast. Players notice everything. They notice when cameras linger a little longer. They notice when gossip starts swirling. They notice who's bringing attention and not the good kind. And all of that reflects back onto Dillon Gabriel, whether he asked for it or not. What makes this even striking is the comparison standing right in front of him. Shedeur Sanders is dealing with more spotlight and scrutiny than most rookies ever will. Son of a legend, huge media following, world watching every move. Yet he and his family haven't created a single distraction for the Browns. They've handled their rise with quiet confidence and total professionalism. So when teammates look at the two quarterbacks side by side, one navigating pressure with discipline, the other suddenly tied to controversy, it becomes pretty clear who they feel more secure rallying behind. Because inside an NFL locker room, the team doesn't just choose a starter based on talent. They choose based on who they believe can control the storm when things get loud. And right now, Dillon Gabriel is fighting against noise he didn't even make. But the hardest part? This disaster didn't have to happen. No scandal, no drama, just one moment online that took everything off track. And the fallout might follow him much longer than anyone expects. What makes this entire situation so frustrating, for fans, for analysts, and likely for Dillon Gabriel himself, is how unbelievably avoidable it all was. Nothing here came from the field. Nothing came from a controversial press conference, a bad attitude, or a violation of team rules. This wasn't the result of a career-ending mistake. It was a social media moment that never needed to exist. If that TikTok had gone up without the snarky caption, this would have been a forgettable post lost in the endless scroll. If she had ignored the negative comment instead of firing back with claims about the organization, the story would have died in the comments section. If any single choice along the way had been different, Dillon Gabriel would still be quietly working toward his NFL dream without the weight of this mess on his shoulders. But that's the brutal reality of life in the spotlight. One emotional reply can undo years of hard work. The NFL is unforgiving. It doesn't care how innocent the intentions were. It doesn't care who hit post. It only cares about what the fallout looks like. And right now, that fallout makes the Cleveland Browns look distracted, unsteady, and divided. It puts pressure on coaches to explain something they never wanted to discuss. It forces a rookie quarterback to answer questions no young player should have to deal with. The saddest part is that everyone knows she was trying to defend him. She wanted to stand up for the man she loves. She wanted to show the world he deserves respect. But in doing so, she unintentionally pulled him into a storm that he may never completely escape. It's a reminder that in professional sports, silence is sometimes the most powerful form of support. Because one slip, one sentence typed too fast, one attempt at a clever comment can become the very thing that holds a player back. And now, the future looks foggy. Will the Browns be patient enough to move past this? Will other teams look at Dillon Gabriel and decide the risk isn't worth the reward? Nobody knows yet. But one thing is certain. This wasn't a football mistake. It was a life mistake. A preventable one. And sometimes those are the hardest to recover from. So now the Cleveland Browns are left staring at a situation that should have never existed. A young quarterback with everything to prove, suddenly fighting off a headline he didn't create. Dillon Gabriel still has the talent, the arm strength, and the competitive drive that got him into the NFL in the first place. But fear not, the NFL isn't just watching how he plays anymore, they're watching how he handles this storm. Some inside the organization may choose to let time smooth things over. A strong stretch of practices, a moment in a game that reminds coaches why they picked him, that could help everything fade into the background. But if the controversy continues to follow him, if every tough loss invites more scrutiny over what's being said online, then the Browns won't hesitate to choose the path of least resistance, because there's always another quarterback waiting for a chance, one without any chaos attached to his name. This is one of those crossroads moments young players rarely recognize until it's too late, a moment where maturity isn't measured by touchdowns or completion percentages, but by how quickly you can shut down the noise that threatens to swallow your career whole. Whether it's fair or not, fans, teammates, and executives are all paying attention now, waiting to see what happens next. Can this be fixed? Absolutely, but only if the drama stops today. Only if the only thing being talked about from here on out is football. Only if Dillon Gabriel and everyone around him understands that in the NFL, one wrong move off the field can matter just as much as any mistake made on it. Because sometimes the difference between a long NFL career and a short one comes down to a simple question. Do you control the spotlight, or does the spotlight control you? And right now, the spotlight has never been brighter.